Today, we're going to venture into the densest forests and remote mountains with 7 terrifying stories involving Bigfoot. Get ready to hear chilling tales of this legendary creature that inhabits the wilderness, leaving only giant footprints and terrified witnesses to tell its story. Oh, and before Bigfoot appears in your window, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This helps the channel a lot and ensures that you don't miss out on any terrifying content like this. Let's go. 1. Tracks in the snow. In the unforgiving mountains of Colorado, Dark Peak stood like an icy sentinel against the gray January sky. The Summit County Alpine Rescue Team had been mobilized after the disappearance of 3 experienced climbers, Marcus Chen, Ellie Donovan, and Trevor Walsh, who failed to return from a planned 2-day climb. Jack Harmon, leader of the rescue team and a veteran with 20 years' experience in the mountains, was studying the map as the helicopter flew over the area. At his side were Maya Rodriguez, an emergency doctor, Derek Collins, an avalanche specialist, and Sam Wilson, the youngest of the group, in his 2nd year with the team. The last radio transmission came from this area, explained Jack, pointing to a remote canyon. They mentioned an approaching storm and that they would seek shelter. After that, silence. The helicopter couldn't land due to the rugged terrain, so the team was dropped off 2 kilometers from the last known point of contact. The temperature was -15 degrees Celsius, and the forecast indicated another storm approaching within 24 hours. "We have to find them before the next front hits," said Jack, adjusting his equipment. After 3 hours of arduous walking in deep snow, Sam spotted something unusual. "Jack, you need to see this," he called out, pointing to the ground. A line of footprints crossed the slope. They weren't human footprints, nor those of any animal known in the area. They were about 50 centimeters long, with 5 distinct toes and a depth that suggested a considerable weight. "Bear," suggested Maya, although her tone indicated that even she didn't believe it. Derek shook his head. "Bears are hibernating now, and those aren't bear tracks. They look almost human, only giant." Jack, who had grown up hearing stories from the Ute natives about the wild man of the mountains, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "Let's stick to the plan. Our focus is the missing climbers." As they advanced, the gorge became narrower, the walls of rock and ice rising ominously on either side. The wind howled between the rock formations, creating sounds that sometimes sounded like distant screams. It was Maya who found the first evidence of the missing climbers, a backpack partially buried in the snow, with Ellie Donovan's name on the label. The equipment was intact, with no signs of animal or avalanche damage. "Why would anyone abandon their survival gear?" she muttered. The answer came an hour later, when they spotted a lone figure sitting in the snow, his back to them, about 100 meters away. "Look, it's someone," exclaimed Sam, already moving towards the figure. "Wait," ordered Jack, something in his gut ringing alarm bells. "Something's not right." Using binoculars, Jack observed the motionless figure. It was Trevor Walsh, recognizable by his distinctive red coat. He was simply sitting in the snow, perfectly upright, without moving. "Trevor," shouted Derek, "we're here to help." No response, no movement. The team approached cautiously. 20 meters away, Sam suddenly froze. "Jack, the footprints," he whispered. The huge footprints they had seen earlier completely encircled the area where Trevor was sitting, some so fresh that they had not yet been filled in by the lightly falling snow. 10 meters away, the terrible truth became clear. Trevor was dead. his body frozen in a sitting position, open eyes fixed on the void. Even more disturbing, he had been deliberately positioned like that, like a macabre marionette. "My God," gasped Maya, examining the body. "He's been dead for at least 24 hours, and that wasn't an accident." Trevor's neck bore strangulation marks made by huge hands. His body had been carefully arranged, pointing in a specific direction, deeper into the canyon. "We need to get out of here now," said Jack, his voice betraying the fear he rarely showed. A sound echoed through the gorge, something between a howl and a scream, not quite animal, not quite human. And then another sound, a female voice, faint but audible. "Help! Someone!" "It's Ellie!" exclaimed Derek. "She's alive!" The voice came from the direction in which Trevor's body was pointing. Jack hesitated, torn between the duty to rescue and the survival instinct that screamed to retreat. "It could be a trap," he said softly. "Something positioned Trevor like that on purpose, pointing in that direction." "We can't just abandon it," argued Sam. After a tense moment, Jack nodded. "We'll go together, compact formation. Any sign of danger, we retreat immediately." They advanced cautiously, tranquilizer guns in hand. The voice kept calling out, weaker by the minute. The gorge opened up into a small clearing surrounded by coniferous trees. In the center, another figure, Ellie, apparently unconscious in the snow. And around the clearing, more giant footprints, dozens of them forming a perfect circle. "It's an ambush," whispered Jack. "Whatever it is, it's watching us now." As if confirming his words, a twig snapped in the trees to the right. Everyone turned, but there was nothing visible among the snow-covered pines. "Maya, Derek, get Ellie. Sam and I will cover you," Jack ordered. As Maya and Derek hurried to catch up with Ellie, Jack saw something that chilled his blood. The voice kept calling, but Ellie's lips didn't move. The sound was coming from somewhere else, or something else. "Get back, now!" he shouted. Too late. A huge figure emerged from the trees, over 2.5 meters tall, covered in dark fur, with vaguely human features distorted into a mask of hunger and hatred. In one giant hand, it held Marcus Chen's severed head, manipulating it like a grotesque ventriloquist to produce the distress calls. 2. The Last Expedition. In the small town of Gilpin County, Colorado, renowned documentary filmmaker James Harlow was preparing what he called his ultimate expedition to capture conclusive evidence of the existence of Bigfoot. After 20 years dedicated to studying the creature, 3 award-winning documentaries, and countless failed expeditions, Harlow assembled a final team for a 2-week journey into the dense forests of the Rocky Mountains. The team was made up of carefully selected experts: Dr. Sarah Chen, a skeptical primatologist; Mike Donovan, a former military officer and survival expert; Lucia Reyes, an anthropologist specializing in indigenous legends; and Tom Wilson, a veteran cameraman who had accompanied Harlow for a decade. "This time will be different," Harlow promised during the preparatory meeting. "I have precise coordinates of an area with recent activity, giant footprints, trees broken in patterns impossible for known animals, and vocalizations captured by my automatic microphones." The expedition began with optimism. Equipped with thermal cameras, camera traps, ultra-sensitive recorders, and state-of-the-art equipment, the group penetrated the state's densest forest, where no official trail existed. On the 3rd day, they found the first sign: a young tree, twisted and broken, at a height of 2 meters, a pattern that Sarah admitted did not correspond to the behavior of bears or other animals known from the region. Nearby, Lucia identified what appeared to be territorial markings, stones piled up in unnatural formations. Some local tribes believed that the Sasquatch used these formations to mark their territory, she explained, photographing the structures. They considered it a warning not to proceed. Harlow ignored the warning. That night, while they were camping, the first incident occurred. Rhythmic knocks on tree trunks echoed through the forest, responding to each other surrounding the camp. Mike recognized the pattern as a siege tactic, similar to those used in military operations. "Whatever it is, it's watching us. And it's not alone," he muttered, checking his equipment. The next morning, they discovered that all the camera traps had been turned to the ground, carefully deactivated without being damaged, demonstrating an unsettling grasp of technology. The footprints around the devices measured 50 centimeters, with 5 distinct toes clearly visible in the damp earth. On the 5th day, Tom disappeared during a quick walk to film the sunrise. The frantic search ended when they found his camera hanging from a high branch, the lens pointed directly at the path the team was likely to follow, as if in warning. The nights became a torment of strategic sounds, branches breaking at specific points, vocalizations that imitated distant human voices, stones thrown with frightening precision near the camp, but never hitting anyone directly. "It's toying with us," Sarah concluded, her scientific skepticism finally shaken. "Testing our limits, studying our reactions, that's not instinctive animal behavior." On the 8th day, Mike didn't return from his morning round. They only found his radio carefully placed in the middle of the trail, turned on and broadcasting static. The remaining 3 decided to abandon the expedition, but discovered that they were being led in circles by false trails and landmarks moved during the night. Lucia recognized the disorientation tactic described in ancient legends, the Sasquatch confusing travelers deeper into its territory. On the 10th night, Lucia disappeared from inside her own tent, without any sound to wake Harlow or Sarah, who were sleeping meters away. The 2 survivors, now fully aware that they were being hunted by something with superior tactical intelligence, made one last desperate attempt to escape. Sarah, using her knowledge of primate behavior, suggested a strategy: leave offerings and retreat submissively, signaling that they recognized the territory and posed no threat. The next morning, they found the fruit and medical supplies they had left as offerings untouched, but rearranged in a precise pattern, a clear response that communication had been established. Following a trail that seemed deliberately open to them, Harlow and Sarah finally found their way out of the forest. At the edge of civilization, one last surprise. Tom, Mike, and Lucia's equipment, carefully stacked, with all the memory cards and tapes removed, except for a single recording left on the main camera. The final footage showed only the dark forest, and, for a brief moment, a pair of reflective eyes staring directly into the lens before a huge hand, covered in dark hair, turned the camera off. James Harlow's last expedition proved the existence of Bigfoot, but the evidence remained deep in the forest, along with 3 members of his team, a price the documentary maker never imagined he would pay for his obsession. 3. The experiment. Deep in the Olympic National Forest in Washington state, a government facility camouflaged as an environmental research station housed the Primate Project, code name for the most secret biological experiment in the United States. After decades of rumors and sightings, Dr. Victor Stein's team had achieved the impossible: the capture of a live Bigfoot. The specimen, designated Subject Alpha, was sedated and transported to the underground facility in a nighttime operation involving military helicopters and an elite special forces team. He was an impressive 2.4 meters tall, weighed around 270 kilos, and his body was covered in dark brown hair. "We are making history," announced Dr. Stein to his team of 12 scientists as they watched the unconscious creature through the reinforced glass. "The biggest anthropological breakthrough since Lucy." Dr. Elisa Chen, a renowned primatologist secretly recruited from the Smithsonian Institute, didn't share her colleagues' enthusiasm. While examining the first test results, something deeply disturbed her. "Your brain structure," she commented during the team meeting on the third day. "The frontal lobe is proportionally larger than that of any known primate, including humans. And the electrical activity readings suggest complex thought patterns, even under sedation." "Fascinating," replied Stein, without catching the concern in his voice. "More evidence that we're dealing with the missing link." In the following weeks, tests revealed more anomalies: extraordinary lung capacity, muscle strength 5 times greater than human, and most disturbingly, a laryngeal structure potentially capable of reproducing complex sounds, possibly speech. Subject Alpha's behavior also baffled the researchers. Even in captivity, he showed an acute awareness of his environment, methodically studying every scientist, every camera, every entrance and exit from his reinforced cell. "He's analyzing us," insisted Elisa during a heated discussion with Stein. "Not like a curious animal, but like a prisoner planning an escape." "You're anthropomorphizing the subject, Doctor." "Chen," scolded Stein. "Remember, despite his humanoid appearance, we're dealing with an animal." The turning point came on the 47th day. During a routine procedure to collect tissue samples, Subject Alpha pretended to be more sedated than he really was. When the technician approached with the needle, the creature grabbed his arm with controlled force, not to hurt, but to immobilize, while his other hand traced symbols in the air. "He was trying to communicate," argued Elisa, reviewing the footage. "We need to reconsider the whole protocol. This isn't an animal, it's an intelligent species." Stein, pressured by his military superiors for concrete results, ignored the warnings. He authorized more invasive tests, including experimental brain stimulation. On the night of the 53rd day, during a rare storm that affected the facility's electrical systems, the inevitable happened. The temporary power failures created a breach in the security systems, a breach that Subject Alpha seemed to have been waiting for. The cameras captured his precise methodology, disabling the electronic locks using an access card stolen from an inattentive technician days before and hidden in his coat. The alarm sounded at 2:17 a.m. The night team found only an empty cell and the body of the security guard, not mutilated by animal rabies, but precisely incapacitated with apparent knowledge of human anatomy. "He's not just running away," Elisa realized, analyzing the pattern of movement on the security cameras. "He's hunting." In the dark corridors of the facility, lit only by the red emergency lights, Subject Alpha moved with purpose. First, he disabled the backup generator, plunging entire sectors into complete darkness. Then he strategically blocked the exits, turning the facility into a deadly labyrinth. One by one, the scientists and security guards were tracked down. Some were simply knocked out and locked in safe rooms. Others, specifically those involved in the most invasive procedures, suffered darker fates, their bodies positioned as warnings for the survivors. When Elisa found herself trapped in her laboratory, she expected certain death. Instead, she found herself face to face with Subject Alpha, his intelligent eyes fixed on hers. With deliberate movements, The creature pointed to Elisa's notes, the only ones that consistently argued for ethical treatment and recognition of her intelligence. Then, in a gesture that defied all previous scientific understanding, Bigfoot picked up a marker and wrote in clumsy but legible letters on the wall, "No animal, people." When the rescue teams finally managed to access the facility 18 hours later, they found Elisa Chen alive and unharmed. All that remained of Dr. Stein were his broken glasses, carefully placed on top of his own classified files, now exposed and ready to be discovered. Subject Alpha had disappeared, taking with him DNA samples, research files, and, most worryingly, detailed knowledge about those who had captured him and about human technology. In the weeks that followed, reports of Bigfoot sightings ceased completely in the region, but in their place came disturbing reports of tall, hairy figures watching the homes of government scientists, sometimes leaving incomprehensible symbols carved into nearby trees, silent messages from an intelligence that humanity had fatally underestimated. What's up, guys? The Bigfoot stories are chilling so far, aren't they? If you're enjoying these spooky tales, how about taking a quick break and subscribing to the channel? Just click on the subscribe button below and leave a like too. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing you more terrifying content like this. Now let's get back to our Bigfoot stories, shall we? There's still a lot of forest terror ahead. 4. Whispers in the Woods. In the dense forests of northern Washington, the small town of Pine Hollow barely appeared on maps. The Mercer family, David, a biology professor, his wife Karen, a nurse, and their 16-year-old daughter Lily, had moved to an isolated cabin on the edge of the forest, looking to start over after the death of their youngest son Michael in an accident the previous year. "It's perfect," said Karen, trying to sound optimistic as they unloaded the change. "Fresh air, nature, a place to heal." Lily watched the line of dense trees with apprehension. Since the accident, she had become withdrawn, abandoning friends and hobbies. Her parents hoped that the peaceful surroundings would help her recovery. The first night, Lily was awoken by sounds coming from the forest. Not the usual animal noises, but something that sounded almost like whispered words in an unknown language. At the edge of the forest, she saw movement, something large and dark, moving between the trees, watching the house. Over the next few weeks, Lily began to explore the forest during the day. On her walks, she found strange signs, trees bent in impossible patterns, huge footprints partially erased by the rain, and small piles of stones arranged in formations that seemed deliberate. During a visit to the local grocery store, Lily overheard whispered conversations about the guardian of the forest, a creature the locals avoided mentioning directly. "Don't venture too deep into the forest, dear," advised the elderly Mrs. Jenkins, "especially near the North Stream. That area has belonged to him for generations." "To whom?" asked Lily. "Some call it Sasquatch, others have different names. The Salish natives who lived here called him the Protector. They say he guards the forests and those he respects." That night, Lily left her window open and placed an apple and a book of poetry on the table nearby, an instinctive offering. By morning, both had disappeared, replaced by a small wooden sculpture depicting a bird, carved in surprising detail. The exchanges continued secretly. Lily left small gifts and always found something in return. Intricate carvings, unusual stones, once even medicinal herbs tied up with plant fibers. One rainy night, when her parents had gone into town, Lily heard soft knocks on her window. Outside, partially hidden by the shadows, stood an enormous figure, over 2 meters tall, covered in dark fur, with deeply intelligent eyes. Instead of fear, Lily felt a strange familiarity. Slowly, she opened the window. "You've been watching me," she said softly. The creature didn't speak, but gestured with hands that were surprisingly delicate for its size. It pointed to a drawing of Michael that Lily had left a few days earlier, then touched its own chest and pointed towards the forest. "You met my brother?" asked Lily, confused. The creature nodded, making more gestures. Michael had been lost in the forest months before the accident, during a school trip. The creature had found him, protected him, and guided him back to safety without ever being seen. Over the next few days, Lily learned more about the creature, which she came to call Guardian. Through gestures and drawings in the dirt, he shared fragments of his solitary existence, the last of his kind in that region, observing humans for generations. The connection between them grew, based on a mutual understanding of loss and isolation. The Guardian had lost his family to hunters decades ago. Lily had lost her brother. Meanwhile, strangers began appearing in Pine Hollow, men with sophisticated equipment asking questions about unusual sightings. David mentioned over dinner that researchers were investigating reports of Bigfoot activity in the area. "Apparently, someone has captured promising images," he explained. "They're planning an expedition in the next few weeks." Lily felt an icy fear. That night she warned the Guardian about the impending danger. He seemed to understand, but instead of running away, he invited her to follow him deeper into the forest. Hesitant but confident, Lily left a note for her parents and followed the creature through the darkness. After hours of walking, they reached a hidden cave. Inside, Lily was amazed. The walls were covered with ancient paintings showing humans and guardian-like creatures coexisting. In the center of the cave, an even bigger surprise, 3 other guardian-like beings, smaller and younger. Her family, whom Lily had assumed dead. The Guardian had perpetuated this belief to protect them. When morning came, Lily realized that she had been brought not only to learn this secret, but to help. The Guardian knew that the researchers would eventually find evidence. Their only hope was for someone who could mediate between the worlds. Returning home, Lily found her parents frantic with worry. After the initial confusion, she made a decision. She would tell them everything. To her surprise, David listened with genuine scientific interest. "If what you say is true," he said thoughtfully, "then we're not dealing with unknown animals, but with an intelligent species." The Mercer family became an unlikely bridge between 2 worlds, and Lily, who had arrived in Pine Hollow, broken by loss, found an unexpected purpose as the guardian of an ancient secret, born of whispers in the forest that only she had been brave enough to answer. 5. The Lost Tribe. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, where the Envira River meanders through dense vegetation, a team of anthropologists led by Dr. Elena Vasquez set up camp to study isolated tribes. The expedition, funded by the University of Lima, sought to document the cultural practices of peoples who had little or no contact with the outside world. The team of 5 researchers, Elena, linguist Marco Ruiz, photographer Thomas Klein, doctoral student Camila Ortiz, and local guide Pedro Santana, had spent 3 weeks navigating the most remote tributaries when they found signs of an undocumented community. "These markings are unlike anything I've ever seen," commented Pedro, pointing to symbols carved into trees. "They look like warnings." After 2 days following the markings, the team found a small village of around 50 people. Surprisingly, the natives showed no fear, but calculated caution. With the help of Pedro, who knew regional dialects, Elena managed to establish basic communication. The tribe, who called themselves the Children of the Green Shadow, lived in isolation by choice. Their village was organized around a central structure that looked like a rudimentary temple. Inside, wooden statues represented tall, hairy figures with humanoid features. They call these figures guardians, Pedro translated after talking to the village shaman. They say they are ancient creatures who protect the forest and all who respect it. Over the next few days, Elena documented a complex mythology. According to the natives, the guardians were physical beings, not just spiritual ones, who lived in the deepest parts of the jungle. Described as creatures over 2 meters tall, covered in dark hair, with superhuman strength and deep knowledge of the forest, they punished those who disrespected nature. It's fascinating how similar this legend is to the myths of the Mapinguari in Brazil and Bigfoot in North America, Elena noted in her notes. But for this tribe, it's no myth. They genuinely believe in the physical existence of these creatures. The shaman explained that the tribe had lived in harmony with the guardians for generations, following strict rules, never hunting more than necessary, never cutting down centuries-old trees, and never entering certain areas of the forest considered sacred, the guardians' territories. Thomas, the photographer, was particularly skeptical. They probably invented these monsters to maintain social control and prevent overexploitation of the resources, he commented during a team meeting. On the morning of the 6th day, the shaman invited the researchers to a welcoming ceremony. During the ritual, he pointed to a distant mountain, visible above the forest canopy. That is the sacred dwelling of the guardians, Pedro translated. No one from the tribe ever goes near that place. Thomas saw an opportunity. We need to investigate that area, he insisted. If there is any real evidence of these creatures, it will be there. Elena hesitated. It would be disrespecting your beliefs. We came to study, not to interfere. Ignoring the warnings, Thomas convinced Marco to accompany him on an unauthorized expedition to the sacred mountain. They set off before dawn, promising to return in 2 days. 3 days passed with no sign of the 2 researchers. The atmosphere in the village changed drastically. The natives avoided the remaining visitors and performed constant rituals. Pedro translated their worried murmurs. They say the guardians have been awakened. On the 4th night, screams echoed from the forest. Elena, Camilla, and Pedro found Marco staggering into camp, wounded and in shock. Thomas was missing. Something followed us from the mountain, stammered Marco between fits of trembling. It wasn't human. Thomas took photos of cave paintings in a cave. Then we heard sounds, like trees breaking. Thomas disappeared while I was sleeping. That night, the team decided to leave the village immediately. The shaman offered guides to escort them to the river, insisting that they leave before nightfall. During the hurried journey through the jungle, Elena noticed disturbing signs. Trees broken at heights impossible for known animals, huge footprints partially visible in the mud, and a musky smell that Pedro identified as the smell of fear. When they reached the boat, they found Thomas's camera carefully placed in the center of the vessel. The photos showed ancient cave paintings depicting humans offering gifts to tall, hairy creatures. The last images, blurred and dark, suggested something massive moving between the trees. As the boat pulled away, Elena looked into the forest and for a moment swore she saw eyes watching them from the dense vegetation, eyes too tall to belong to anyone. Months later, in her office in Lima, Elena received a small wooden box carved with the same symbols they had first seen. Inside was Thomas's watch, along with native seeds and a small wooden sculpture depicting a guardian, a warning or a peace offering she would never know for sure. The official expedition was recorded as inconclusive due to the accidental loss of a team member. The photos from Thomas's camera were inexplicably corrupted when analyzed, and Elena never returned to the Amazon, carrying with her the knowledge that some tribes remain isolated not only from the modern world, but also protected by guardians who may not just be legends. 6. The Lumberjack's Curse. In a logging town, an ancient curse tells of a lumberjack who turned into a wild creature after massacring a sacred area of the forest. Every 50 years, he returns to take revenge on the descendants of those who exploit the forest. In the snowy mountains of northern Oregon, the small town of Timber Creek has prospered for generations thanks to the logging industry. Founded in 1873 by determined pioneers, the town was dominated by the imposing Blackwood sawmill, which employed almost half of the local inhabitants. What few current residents knew was the real story behind the town's founding. In 1873, the ambitious lumberjack Ezekiel Blackwood led an expedition to explore a virgin area of the forest, ignoring the warnings of the local natives about the sacred heart of the ancestral trees. "This land belongs to us now," Blackwood declared to his men as they felled the first of the gigantic century-old pines. "God gave us these trees for our benefit." The devastation was swift and relentless. In just 1 month, the sacred heart had been reduced to stumps. That's when the storm began, an unprecedented blizzard that isolated the woodcutters for weeks. When they finally managed to return to civilization, only 5 of the 20 men survived, led by a strangely changed Ezekiel Blackwood. The survivors told terrifying stories about screams in the forest and a hairy creature that hunted the men down one by one. Blackwood silenced these stories, attributing the deaths to the cold and the wolves. The sawmill prospered, and the Blackwood family became the most powerful in the region. In 1923, exactly 50 years after it was founded, Timber Creek faced a series of brutal killings. 7 men, all descendants of the original lumberjacks, were found torn to pieces in the forest. The authorities blamed a particularly aggressive bear, but the elders whispered about the curse of Blackwood and a creature that walked like a man but hunted like a beast. In 1973, the pattern repeated itself. This time, the victims included the then owner of the sawmill, Jonathan Blackwood, found hanging from a pine tree with his body torn apart by claws impossible for any animal known in the region. Now, in 2023, the current mayor of Timber Creek, Rebecca Blackwood, a direct descendant of Ezekiel, was preparing for the town's 150th anniversary celebrations. As part of the celebrations, she had authorized the expansion of the sawmill into a hitherto untouched area of the forest, the last portion of what had once been the Sacred Heart. Mark Chen, the new forester, noticed the first worrying signs in mid-January. Century-old trees appeared broken, not cut or fallen naturally, but twisted and shattered by tremendous force. Strange footprints marked the snow, too big for a bear, with 5 distinct fingers like a human, but with deep claws. "Something is wrong in the forest," Mark warned during a town council meeting. "We should suspend expansion until we investigate." Rebecca Blackwood dismissed his concerns. "My family built this town, and it won't be superstitions that stop our progress." When the first lumberjacks disappeared, the community went on alert. 2 men simply didn't return from their shift. Search teams found only their equipment and bloodstains in the snow. Mark, searching through the municipal archives, discovered the 50-year pattern and the original story of the town's founding. In a preserved diary of one of the original survivors, he read a disturbing account. Blackwood changed after that night in the sacred forest. Something entered him. His eyes sometimes look wild, not human. I'm afraid of what we brought with us from the forest. When Mark presented his findings to Rebecca, she revealed a family secret kept for generations. Ezekiel Blackwood never officially died. After founding the town, he disappeared into the forest during a solitary expedition. His son took over the business, claiming that his father had died of pneumonia. "It's just a family legend," Rebecca insisted, "a story to scare disobedient children." That night, during a heavy snowfall, something attacked the sawmill. The few workers on the night shift described a creature over 2 meters tall, covered in dark hair, mixed with what looked like pieces of deteriorated lumberjack clothing, moving with impossible speed and roaring in an almost human voice. The creature left a bloody message on the wall: "Blackwood returns." As panic spread through the town, Mark organized a meeting with the native elders of the nearby reserve. The old shaman explained the true nature of the curse. When Ezekiel Blackwood felled the first sacred tree, the guardian spirit of the forest merged with him, gradually transforming him into a hybrid being, part man, part vengeful spirit of nature. Every 50 years, when the winter moon turns red, the creature awakens to claim blood from the descendants of those who violated the forest, explained the shaman. The only way to calm its rage is to return what was stolen. Mark and Rebecca, an unlikely alliance, faced an impossible choice: continue the tradition of exploitation that sustained the town, or face the wrath of a creature that was both ancestral and a manifestation of nature's vengeance. As the snowfall increased and the red moon rose over the horizon, elongated shadows moved between the trees towards the town. The woodcutter's curse had returned to collect its centuries-old debt, and this time no wall or weapon could stop the primordial fury of a forest that never forgets. 7. Transmission interrupted. In the dense forests of Hokkaido, Japan, adventurer and digital influencer Kenji Tanaka had built a lucrative career with his Legend Hunter channel. Specializing in exploring locations associated with Japanese folkloric creatures, Kenji had recently turned his attention to the Hibagon, the Japanese version of Bigfoot, supposedly spotted in the island's remote mountains. "Tonight, we're going to make history," Kenji announced to his 1.8 million followers as he adjusted his camera in the dark forest. The live broadcast had started 20 minutes ago and was already breaking viewing records. "We're in the area where 3 mountaineers have reported encounters with the Hibagon in the last month. Equipped with thermal cameras, camera traps, and ultra-sensitive microphones, Kenji advanced confidently through the dense vegetation. His assistant Takeshi had remained in the nearby town, monitoring the transmission and coordinating with the technical team. "Did you hear that?" whispered Kenji, stopping abruptly. A branch had broken in the darkness beyond the reach of his flashlight. "Something's moving over there." The camera captured the exact moment Kenji turned to investigate the sound. For a second, the image shook violently, then silence. The screen froze momentarily before going completely dark. Viewers, initially thinking it was a technical problem, flooded the chat with questions. Takeshi tried desperately to re-establish contact. After 20 minutes of silence, he alerted the authorities. The rescue team found Kenji's camp the next morning. His tent was destroyed, equipment scattered over a radius of 30 meters. Bloodstains marked the ground, but there was no body. Kenji's smartphone was broken, the main camera missing. Only a camera trap remained intact, although its memory card had been removed. The search continued for 2 weeks before being officially suspended. The case became a national sensation, with theories ranging from animal attack to elaborate publicity stunt. Gradually, like so many viral stories, Kenji Tanaka's disappearance was forgotten by the general public. Exactly 1 year later, an anonymous video appeared on an obscure forum dedicated to cryptozoology. The recording, made with Kenji's missing camera, showed the influencer tied to a tree, visibly injured but conscious. More disturbing, the camera was being operated by something partially visible in the shadows, a large figure covered in dark hair with surprisingly agile hands manipulating the controls. The video ended abruptly after 37 seconds. 3 days later, a second one appeared on the same forum. This time, Kenji was in a dark cave, thinner, beard grown, eyes feverish with fear. The creature now appeared briefly in the frame, moving with a bewildering mixture of animalistic gestures and human precision. Wildlife experts were baffled. No known primate demonstrates this level of technological understanding, said Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto from the University of Tokyo. If authentic, we are observing completely unprecedented behavior. Over the following weeks, 5 more videos were posted at irregular intervals. Each one showed Kenji in a progressively weaker state. In the 4th video, the creature could be seen imitating the characteristic gestures and phrases that Kenji used in his broadcasts, like a macabre parody. The last video, posted exactly 40 days after the first, showed the camera strategically positioned on a rock. The creature dragged what appeared to be Kenji's inert body out of the frame. After a few minutes, it returned on its own, sat directly in front of the lens, and with deliberate movements, turned off the recording using the same commands that Kenji used. Japanese authorities were never able to trace the origin of the posts. Forensic analysis confirmed the authenticity of the videos, ruling out digital manipulation. Kenji's family offered a substantial reward for information, while cryptozoologists debated the disturbing implications. A creature not only capable of capturing humans, but of learning, imitating, and using technology. The case inspired a wave of amateur hibagon hunters, despite official warnings. 2 of these adventurers disappeared 6 months later in the same region. Their cameras were found carefully stacked on the trail, memory cards removed. In the mountains of Hokkaido, rangers now ban live broadcasts in certain areas. Occasionally, trail cameras capture blurry images of something large moving among the trees, always just out of reach, always watching, and perhaps learning. And so, we come to the end of our 7 horror stories involving Bigfoot. So, what did you think? Which story gave you the most chills? Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this dive into the terrifying world of Bigfoot, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps the channel grow and motivates me to keep bringing you more scary content like this. And if you're not subscribed yet, take the opportunity to subscribe now and activate the little bell.